Welcome back to Two Unemployed Actors. I'm Max, and in this episode, I'll be talking to Terry Knickerbocker, an acting coach based at his studios in New York, and also a timely chat considering one of the many actors he has coached is Boyd Holbrook, who plays Callback in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny that's currently in cinemas. So a great opportunity to pick up some more tips and tricks right here on Two Unemployed Actors.
Two unemployed actors, two unemployed actors, they're just between projects.
Terry, welcome.
Thank you, Max, so much. What I didn't hear the last word. They're just between
Projects.
projects. Yeah. Well, that's acting. Yeah.
I think no matter how successful you are, there's always a moment where, one project ends and perhaps you haven't 100% locked in the next.
So often.
It's just that up and coming emerging actors, the gap tends to be a bit bigger than the actual projects.
But even, one of the guys I work with a lot, Sam Rockwell, we've done over 100 movies and 3 Broadway plays and a couple of TV shows together over the last 30 years. He hasn't worked in over a year. And because he says no to things and just hasn't quite found the right thing, and then things got slowed down. So now he's got 2 things that are about to start up, but he's gone a long time between
I like
projects.
that it's just as important to what you say no to as to what you say yes to. I mean, it's great to be in a position where you're getting opportunities and you can pick and choose. And certainly if you can afford to have, a year off, whether it's to prepare a character or choose the right project, that's great. He's a fantastic actor.
He is a great actor, and he's a great soul and a great friend, and he was the best man at my wedding, and we go way, way back, and I love him dearly, and he's one of my favorite people to work with. But there are 2 things in what you just said. One, artistically, it's hard for him. It's not just, he's got a little bit of money in the bank and he's getting money from previous projects and all that, so that he's not worried about paying his rent. That's not the issue as much as he's hungry. He came in, he's watched a few classes that I've taught recently because he's just the artist in him is hungry, and so there's that. And then I don't think you have to wait till you have an established career to say no. That's the biggest power you have.
That's a good point.
And actors do get very frightened to say no because they get, especially before things are moving, because they go, well, what if they don't knock on the door again? What if nobody wants me again? What if my agent gets pissed off at me and says, oh, this little acting snob, not good enough, huh? Well, I don't have time to work with actors who say no. And it's true, when you first start, you probably say yes to things that may be further along. You'd go, why did I say yes to that? But it was going to lead to something. But that is your greatest power, is to be able to say no and to feel good about it. I've become recently interested in the work of this, now in California, a therapist. His name is Gay Hendricks and his wife, Katie Hendricks. And I'm always interested in woo-woo stuff and what leads to maximum achievement. What do high achievers, whether they're basketball players or acting coaches or actors or surgeons or whatever, what leads to that? And one of the things he says is, whatever you do in life, you need a full body yes, right? Which is a little bit like it's got to be a hell yes, not just a yes. Mm-hmm. And so if you get someone offering you a project and you go, yeah, I could see why I would do it, but you're not on fire to do it, then that's a no.
And I think it is important too, as an emerging actor, because there's those opportunities where, the remuneration might not be right, or, on the business side, or there's that dreaded term of in perpetuity, where you go and do an advertisement or something, and it might even be a great character in a commercial, but, they want to be able to use that forever and ever and ever. So, when you switch on to the business brain where everything lines up, but there's that red flag. So you're sort of in a position where sometimes the position of power is so against you that, you feel like you need to say yes for so many reasons. But but the warning bells telling you, perhaps a no is the best option.
Or the script just doesn't turn you on.
Yeah.
Enough, right? It's like, I'm going to spend a month in crazy and in the makeup chair every day for this.
I mean, passion is great because you're so, wherever you are in your day, you know, there's that moment where you're just thinking about the character, and inspiration can come from anywhere. And if you're so passionate about it, you feel so connected. Everything, it's like when you buy a car and suddenly you see that car everywhere. You know, you're in the character's head, and suddenly you see all these opportunities to add layers and richness to the character.
Yeah.
So, are you an acting coach who started as an actor?
I did. Yeah. My dad, my late father, carried around a photo. I don't even remember, of me like in a beard and a long coat from some like church play when I was 5. And then when I was in what we call middle school, which is like 6th, 7th grade, I was in some shows, and then I did some in summer camp, and then I did West Side Story in high
Oh,
school.
wow.
Oh my God, this is a bad audition story. I'm just
We've all
so
got them.
oh my God, but this is high school, right? So
Yeah.
I wanted to play this character named Action
Right.
in West Side Story. He's the guy who goes, boy, boy, crazy boy, stay cool, boy, right? And he's like just under Riff in the Jets. He's like number 2. He's like the lieutenant. And it was between me and this guy, Andrew Friedman. And Mrs. Gunyon, who was the director, the drama director at my high school, said, okay, boys, it's down to the 2 of you. It's between you, Terry, and Andrew. And here's how I'm going to decide. You're going to walk across the stage. And based on whose walk feels better to me, that's who's going to get the part. That was the callback, was a walk.
Wow.
I didn't get the part because my walk wasn't good enough.
Oh, mate. Bloody Andrew.
And so Andrew. Andrew's not an actor now. He's not in the business. He's a chiropractor or something like that.
Because he can manufacture a great walk.
Great walk. That's right. So I instead played the part of Big Deal in West Side Story, who was also a Jet, but a much junior Jet to Action, who Action got to push around. So I was acting in high school. Then I became a French major in college, but I saw this audition notice for a weird, obscure French operetta called The Grand Duchess of Gerolstein, written by Jacques Offenbach.
Right.
Who's known for an opera that's occasionally done by maybe at the Sydney Opera, they might do it once every decade, called Tales of Hoffmann. And I auditioned to be in the chorus, and I got to be in the chorus, which means I was like a soldier who sang. I didn't have any lines, but I loved it, and I stopped going to classes. And all I did was become involved in college theater at Boston University and then at Harvard University. And then they kicked me out of Boston University because I wasn't going to classes. And so I did that in Boston for like 3 or 4 years. And then said, I think I need some training because I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and auditioned for NYU and got in.
Is this when you were drawn to the Meisner technique at that time, or was that
almost
not quite?
Almost.
Yeah.
The whole story here, Max. No. They didn't teach Meisner at NYU at the time. And I didn't even know who Meisner was, which is really weird because he was so well known and he was alive. But who I knew about and who we talked about was Uta Hagen. These were all alive acting gurus at the time. Uta Hagen, this is like the mid 80s.
Yep.
Uta Hagen, Lee Strasberg, and Stella Adler. Those are the folks that everyone knew about, that all the, like Pacino studied with Strasberg and De Niro studied with Stella Adler. And, like those are the people. I didn't know about Meisner, which is weird because I liked a lot of the people he trained, like Steve McQueen and Diane Keaton, who studied with Meisner, but I didn't know about him. So I graduated from NYU, great school, hard to get into, great teachers, one of the best places. And then I was working on something and it went well. And then the next project I was working on, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I got really scared. And maybe I see you laughing, so maybe you can relate to
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Like my work felt hit or miss,
Yeah.
and I didn't know why, but I got scared. And some smart part of me thought, well, that's not cool. Like I can't just be an actor who's, I mean, this is the analogy I always make. Can you imagine a dentist who you go to see and like 1 week he knows what to do with your teeth, and then you go and see him a few months later, he's like, I don't know. I don't have it today. Right? Or how about something closer to home? How about a violinist or a ballet dancer? You don't see that in those professions. And we're talking about being professional.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to me you can be professional and have your work be inconsistent. But I knew a lot of actors, and maybe that's why you were smiling, who would say, yeah, sometimes I could figure it out and like the part's just there and I got it. And other times they're like in my brain, I know what it's supposed to be, but I don't know. I don't have a GPS for how to access the part of me that I need to
Yeah.
really deliver this performance. And around that time, I was working backstage at a small but very important New York off Broadway theater called La Mama in the East Village. And my teacher at NYU was one of their resident directors. She was from Israel, Rina Yerushalmi. And this guy was in the part, so I saw him every night. And he was doing the kind of work every night consistently that I aspired to do. It was like Dustin Hoffman. It was like character and behavior and emotion and clarity and precision. I went, man, what you're doing is, it'll be like watching Michael Jordan. And I said, that's exactly what I wanted to do. How do you do that? He said, well, I studied with this guy, Bill Esper. He does the Meisner technique. And I said, okay, I'll go and talk to Bill. Bill had been with Meisner for 15 years and then branched off into his own studio. So he was really right from the lineage.
Yeah.
And I'd done 4 years at NYU, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just like take a little side acting class. I said, no. This is a 2-year program on top of the 4 years you just did. And for whatever reason, I didn't think twice because I wanted to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you saw that on stage every night. So
I saw it. I wanted that. And I've now discovered what I think was the seminal mistake in a lot of American training that NYU did, which Meisner doesn't do. And that makes the big difference with his work and why I think it's so effective, is that we started at NYU with scene study. That was day one.
wow.
We did Streetcar Named Desire in day one.
Wow.
That would
Yeah.
be like starting piano lessons
Mm.
with Beethoven, right? Or ballet lessons with Swan Lake. You'd never do that. But so many acting approaches, you see these, we have an actors newspaper. It's now a website called Backstage, which has like auditions and stuff like that. And you'll see ads, because that's how they monetize the whole thing, is with ads from acting teachers. Because guess what, Max? You don't need a license to teach acting.
No, I've often said there's sometimes more acting coaches in Sydney than actual actors, but
That's right. And anyone can get a business card printed and a sign printed and rent some bloody space and say, I teach actors, and no one's going to check up on them, which is, are we allowed to swear here?
absolutely, it's a podcast.
It's fucking dangerous.
It is fucking dangerous, particularly when you're meddling with the minds of vulnerable sometimes.
Never mind the
individuals.
minds. How about the souls, right? The hearts.
Indeed.
And so it makes no sense, but that NYU and so many programs, good programs,
Yeah.
start with scene study. And Meisner, I believe, because I never spoke with him, I didn't ever meet him, and I wish I had. He had also been a trained pianist in addition to being an actor. And so I believe when he, as part of the group theater, which included Strasberg and Stella Adler and Clifford Odets and all these great American theater people, their lives were changed when Stanislavski, the famous Konstantin Stanislavski, came to America from Moscow with the Moscow Art Theater to do Chekhov's The Seagull. Because before then, American acting was sort of like what you see in early silent films, like Charlie Chaplin, like, you must pay the rent. I won't pay the rent. Yo ho ho. It's like really
Yeah.
over the top.
Yeah.
Nothing
Vaudeville
authentic.
style, which perhaps doesn't
Yeah,
translate
yeah. That was
to the screen.
American acting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was Sarah Bernhardt. That was American acting. Way over the top.
Yeah.
And then their minds were blown when Stanislavski, and they thought, oh my God, I'm watching real life on stage. And so he shared with them some of his work, which was constantly changing, right? So Strasberg does a different version of Stanislavski's work than Stella Adler and Meisner. And I think Meisner was looking for, well, what's the equivalent of a scale or an arpeggio? Because nobody goes to, we would say, Carnegie Hall here in New York, great concert hall, to hear scales. You don't go to hear scales. You don't go to listen to Eric Clapton or John Mayer play scales, but those fucks do a lot of scales so that they can become musical. And I think Meisner's technique, which starts with this little thing called the repetition exercise, which is not on the waterfront. It's not The Godfather. It's not Chekhov. It would be like my saying, you're wearing headphones. And you'd say back to me, I'm wearing headphones. I'd say, you're wearing headphones. You'd say, I'm wearing headphones. We just sort of bounce that back and forth. You're going, oh, how is that going to help my acting? But it does, because it starts to really get you to improvise clearly from unanticipated moment to unanticipated moment. It makes me pay attention to you. I see that you're nodding your head right now. So I say, oh, Matt's with me. It makes me start to become in touch with myself as much as I'm in touch with you. Like you have these people on YouTube can see you have a little bit of a kind of a pleasant smile on your face. And it's a bit of I don't know, it's kind of a rascally kind of smirk that you have there on your face. And it's like, I like it. It makes me feel friendly, but makes me wonder what else is going on with Max. So we start to be in really rich relationship, which is useful for acting, obviously, because I heard you talking about chemistry in your wrap-up number 100 thing. And I would say to you, there's no such thing as chemistry. Here's what chemistry is, really keying into someone. That's chemistry. As opposed to the chemistry read that we do on jobs now, like you get through the audition, you get through the callback.
Yeah.
Then they go, well, the network is interested, but now we want to mix and match. We've got a short list of 6 actors. And it's kind of like being on a dating show. And we're going to do a chemistry read. And then the actors, they're like, well, geez, I hope I have chemistry, but there's nothing I can do about it. Are you kidding? There's everything you can do about it, because if someone really feels that they're with you and you're with them and you see them and they feel seen, the endorphins are going to start to light up like a first date where you're going, hey, you know what? I'm kind of nervous and I hope that's okay. And it's really nice to see you. And that's a great color on you. And like, you're not trying to play them so you can get them in bed. You're just like, you're being real, and they feel seen, and then they relax. And then the people in casting are going like, these people are very good together.
It's a great point. I know, because also, and just slightly on a tangent, but not, my brief 20-year corporate career in between acting as a teenager and coming back a few years ago, having to go in a sales environment, there's a lot of pressure, and you've got to build these effective relationships really quickly, because, the dollars are there every day. And I think, it was great to come in and have a bit of an actor mindset still in the corner of my brain, so that I'm acknowledging, I'm listening, and I'm matching it to a degree, and not selling used car salesman, but just talking to the person rather than the role. Yeah.
How would you like to be treated?
Exactly. It's really interesting. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to go from being an acting coach to starting an entire studio with faculty and a comprehensive 2-year conservatory course. I mean, why? That's quite a bit of work.
You are right. If I knew then what I know now, I would never have done this. Because, man.
So it wasn't a grand plan.
Well, it was a grand plan, but it emerged. I mean, I'm going to be very frank, and I went from being an actor to being a director by accident.
Right.
I have a wife and two beautiful children now, but I had a different wife back then, and wonderful playwright, an actress. And she had a play that another now very famous director, who was a good friend of ours and an amazing, inspiring colleague named Anne Bogart, the CT Company, um, was supposed to direct. And then it turned out she got another job that she had to take. And so there was no director. And my wife at the time said, "Hey, would you like to direct this?" And I went, okay, sure. Not thinking it would be anything. And then I went, oh my God, I like this even more than acting. Why? Because I get to decide everything. I get to decide, because I was one of these actors. Yeah, power, but like creative power. Like then I realized, oh my God, that was something, because you never, as you know, as an actor, give acting notes to another actor,
No.
but boy, did I want to. I'd be there like, oh my God, this moment could be so much better, but that wasn't my place. My job was to tend my own garden. So when I got to be a director, I was there like, oh, I get to decide what color to paint the walls and to collaborate. I mean, it just became such a richly entrepreneurial, all-encompassing creativity opportunity for me to talk about costumes and sound and lights and dramaturgy and casting and blocking and all the good stuff that gave me so much more artistic food than acting did. I loved it. So when I was working at this, I went on, I trained with William Esper after learning how to act with him. I went to him because I discovered that you cannot make a living as a director, a stage director. Very difficult in America, unless you have a show on Broadway that's a musical, right? So Lion King, Julie Taymor's been getting checks for 20 plus years. Wicked, Joe Mantello's been getting checks for 20 plus years, and nice checks.
Yeah.
So if you have that, then you can relax and you can do a staged reading and not worry about where your money's going to come from, right? But I was never going to do musicals. I like straight plays to direct, and there's no straight play in America that's been running forever. We don't have a mousetrap. There's no residuals. There's no, so you have to find a way to make a living between projects. And for lots of directors, that either meant being on staff at a theater. They didn't need anybody. Some people weirdly would direct soap operas. I tried that, and it just, it was like pouring acid on my soul.
What, is that because there were so many decisions that are already made for you, and it was difficult to be that creative person that you unlocked?
In a soap opera?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, I mean, it's not so creative. I mean, there's some creativity, but and some great people direct those things. And there were a few that were being filmed in New York, many in LA. It just, the writing didn't inspire me, and the acting I saw there, a lot of it was really just not, it was like nails on a chalkboard. And there's some great people who write, and I don't want to like go, I'm better than soap operas. It's a wonderful living for some actors, and there's some people who've done incredible work for years on soap operas and got their start in soap operas and did legitimate work, and you watch them and you go like, what's your deal, man? This is great. But there was so much other stuff around it that it was just going to be hard for me to work every day and do that. And so the third option was teaching. And so I originally requested Bill Esper to train me to teach, which he did and took me on, which I'm forever grateful for. Because it changed my life and everything.
How long did you spend learning to teach in a way? And how
well,
was
I'm still learning. I'm still learning, right? But I would say that the process back then was to sit behind Bill and take notes like an apprentice. I did that for 2 years, and he gave me 4 students to start with. So it was not how I was making a living. And they were his students who he'd taken on as extra students waiting for someone to leave the class. And then he gave me like a very small summer section for 6 weeks with like 10 students. So it was a really tiny garden that started to grow. And simultaneously, where I went at NYU, which is the experimental theater wing, also needed a teacher at some point, and so I started to teach there a little bit. So I got lots of time to practice it. But again, it was all originally to support my directing. I did not see myself as running a studio. I did not see myself as teaching as my calling. It was really just to give me support. And in fact, I directed while I was doing that and had to find replacements at times to teach my classes so I could go and direct a play. And at some point, something shifted. Maybe it was because of some of the compromises I was making, even in the theater world, like being forced to cast someone who was part of a company because they came with the package who I would never want to cast, didn't believe was right for the part, but if I was going to work with this company, I had to take them. So I was having to make artistic compromises, as we all do, that didn't feel right to me. And meanwhile, the teaching was feeling somewhat, I don't mean to be arrogant here, but or whatever, but purer. Somehow the teaching felt like I didn't have to compromise as much. And so that eventually took over. And that was nice. And I realized now, getting to the how did I go to starting a studio with all those moving parts, because it
Yeah.
was a nice deal. I taught at NYU. I had benefits. I had a pension fund. I had, I had a health plan. Um, I had a guaranteed living. I was full-time faculty in NYU, which is a plum job for anyone who wants to teach in the arts. And I was also teaching a lot at the Esper Studio and started to have somewhat of a reputation that people were, instead of going like, who am I going to study with? They go, oh yeah, I've heard of him. He's okay. I mean, Bill was still
The
the
God.
main event, as he should have been, right? Because he was spectacular, but I was doing well enough. I could have done that for life. I could be doing that now and be so taken care of. But around that time in 2013, my son was born, and there was a little bit of restlessness in me that wanted to, like in directing, decide what color to paint the walls, or really to decide some curricular things. Like I really wanted to have Afro-Haitian dance as part of the curriculum, because we had that at NYU with this incredible teacher named Pat Hall. And you go like, what the hell does Afro-Haitian dance have to do with acting? But there was something about the way she led students through these dances from Ghana and Nigeria, that made them better actors, weirdly, right? And got them to really get into their pelvises, which is where a lot of stuff lives for human beings that is taboo, and that the other movement training wasn't really accessing. So this power and sexuality and primitivity was all starting to come out in that class. So I wanted that, but
Yeah.
it was Bill's studio. His name was on the door. He wasn't just gonna go, sure, let's have Afro-Haitian dance. It wasn't his thing. So I started to realize that these restless wishes on my part, coupled with the birth of my son and my I didn't want to model for him settling. So it kind of goes back to what we started with about saying no, or is it a hell yes? Is it a full body yes? Like it was a yes, but not a full body yes. And so that's when I started to fantasize and plan and think about and assess, well, what would be involved, because there are a lot of moving parts. Because when you work for someone else, you don't have to worry about paying the rent. You don't have to worry about payroll. You don't have to worry about negotiating contracts and all the other stuff that go with this. And there's so many moving parts: hiring faculty, worrying about whether a student pays their bills or not,
Yeah.
etc. I was like, you get taken care of. And I realized I was going to be the taker carer of, and either it was going to work or it wasn't going to work. And, so far it's doing okay. And that's nice.
That's great. That's great. And I love the way your passion sort of led you on that path. And I think how fantastic for the actors walking into your studio to know that you've been able to see it or experience it as an actor from an NYU perspective, from Meisner, and see actors from a director perspective. And then, of course, in your experience teaching for NYU and at Meisner, I mean, you know who's who in the business and who you'd like to just to work with or to be helping you with your studio. I think that's a great
Yeah.
resource. Yeah.
Yeah, I lucked out. There's so many teachers who I asked, can you recommend like people or colleagues at NYU, top of their game? I never would imagine that they would want to teach with me, but can you recommend someone who can teach your work? And so many of them said, well, how about me? And it's not like they needed a job.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, the best Alexander teacher in New York. I have the best stage combat teacher in New York. I have the best movement teacher in New York, and the people that I mean, I have oh God, I have the most amazing voice teacher, Linkletter voice teacher. I mean, I am so, so lucky.
Well, I think also it's the work you've done. I mean, you can't unlock those relationships, those connections, without having been in the trenches, so to speak, at NYU and all these other places. So,
And no, I'll take some credit for that,
good on
but
you.
but the students, I just think, I mean, I try to position the studio as an affordable, legitimate alternative to a top quality MFA program.
Yeah.
And we've got teachers who teach in both.
Mm.
So there are some differences. You're not going to get a degree, which I think of as a backup plan, right? Like I meet students, they go, well, I want a degree. I say, why? Do you think Scorsese cares if you have a degree? Do you think an agent cares? They say, yeah, well, then I could teach. And I said, oh, so you have a backup plan, which is a fear-based plan. And, so that's not necessary. It's a credential. It's hanging on the wall. The other thing is that they do productions and we don't do productions.
Yeah.
We have these shares of things that we put together to share with family and friends and the public, but it's not like a full-blown production, which could be great. I did shows at NYU and I directed shows at NYU as well, but when I was also in them as a student, some of them fantastic. You meet amazing directors, you work with, but sometimes you don't get the right part and you don't have a great director. And that's not necessarily an amazing experience. So just because you have productions doesn't mean you're having a better experience. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think moving into the detail of the studio from an actor's perspective, I mean, certainly as an actor who survived several acting coaches and workshops and all that, I know how important it is to create a safe space for us as artists to explore and really push ourselves. And I know for myself, having experienced a great moment coming out of corporate, having to blow those cobwebs away, working with a local teacher who's busy working on screen and on stage. I've seen him many times, and using a technique like the Callback technique, where there's lots of processes and things. So coming out of corporate, I got it, and it worked well. But primarily because it was a nice, safe space where I could just fall over on my face and not worry about anything other than how do I get myself up and try again. I guess
that's important.
Yeah,
Because you just used the words, you just kind of rolled through the word survived.
Mm-hmm.
And my kind of soul went like, I bet there's some stories there.
Correct.
Because as you said, it's an incredibly huge and awesome, by awesome, I mean fearsome, not like amazing, responsibility and trust for an actor to say, I'm going to open myself. You're not going to harm me, are you? You're not going to take advantage of. That's why I said acting teachers don't need licenses. And I had a teacher at NYU who was an extraordinary teacher, but very cruel. And you don't need that. And so it's a huge responsibility to teach, and it's a big generosity of trust for an actor to say, I'm going to let down my walls and soften myself in the work and allow you to guide me and to earn that trust. Which I think you have to earn. I don't think you just get it automatically.
And I guess there's no accident then that the first value on your studio's website is trustworthiness. So, I mean, even before you get in there and start talking about what techniques and it's well, this space is safe, and whatever happens in this space is for us. And
safe enough. There's nobody who can guarantee you a safe space because you can't know. At NYU, my boss there, Ruben, uh, said, let's think about a brave space instead of a safe space where we can take risks, healthy risks,
Yeah.
but it's only safe enough because you might inadvertently be triggered. And I said to a student once, because I side coach, while the work is going on, sometimes I side coach. So that means don't stop, keep going. And I'm like a spotter at the gym. And the Meisner exercise happens in duets. And I said to one person about their partner, I said, are they making it all about themselves? Which was a rhetorical question because they were.
Mm.
Wow, this student became apoplectic. Why? Because that's something their father used to say to them. And of course, inadvertent on my part, I had no intention of like sticking the needle in their acupuncture
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Some acting teachers would like to do that. They go, oh, your cat died. How's your cat? Stuff like that. That's just meant to be provocative. And sure, you'll come to life. But then when the scene's over, you're like still bleeding. So no one can promise a safe space. And anyone who says they can, I would run because
Mm.
it's not possible. But a safe enough space.
Yeah.
And that if something comes up inadvertently,
Mm.
we find a way to regroup
Mm.
and for me to say, oops, I'm sorry. And how do we get back?
And I think that's certainly really valuable, and as an actor, it energizes you in a way to know that, yeah, I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to try something I haven't tried before, or I'm going to explore something that is difficult to me, but I feel like that's something I can do here. So that's fantastic. And I look, I know some actors who are just amazing to work with, but when it comes to auditions, they put so much pressure on themselves and find it really hard to bring out their best work in that situation on cue. Do you have any advice for those emerging actors who perhaps are trying to build up that level of experience where they feel more confident in that space? And, would it be different for film, TV, or theatre?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you said on cue, and now,
Yeah.
thanks to COVID, there's almost no such thing as live auditioning anymore, which
Yeah.
everyone's self-tapes. So
Mm.
you have the opportunity to do 100 takes until you feel good. And that's a nice, that could be on the one hand comforting. Like I don't
Mm.
have to feel pressure to go meet a bunch of people who don't know me and feel like I'm the Christian being fed to the lions, you know.
Yeah.
But the downside of that is that you don't get that opportunity for an adjustment
Yeah.
room that you would in the old days because maybe what you're doing is great, but you thought you misread the script or the sides weren't quite clear and you went in the wrong direction. And because time is money in this business and they need to move on, they will hopefully remember that your work was interesting. So they'll keep you for next time because that's the best you can do as the odds of you getting the part are infinite, they're one out of however.
Exactly.
Hopefully they'll remember you because they need good actors to think about. So that's one thing. But I would say, first of all, it's a skill to audition, and it's a different skill than acting. It's adjacent, it's related, but there's some people who are really good auditioners, and then when they get the part, they don't deliver. And there's some people who are really bad auditioners because it's just a weird artificial process talking to someone who's a reader or talking to your voice as the reader or your girlfriend's voice as the reader with your dog barking in the background or whatever and wondering how to handle certain weird things in scripts like what do I do if I'm supposed to be drinking? Some people say use props, some people don't. How do I handle physical violence in an audition? How do I handle sex scenes in an audition or kissing or dancing? It's like there's all this weird
Yeah.
stuff that people get anxious about. So I think you just need to practice it a lot. And hopefully, if you have an agent submitting you, they'll get some feedback. So it's not just you're throwing it into the ether and you don't know what happened, which is often what happens. But I would think that the best thing you can do has to do with mindset. And the mindset is, I love moments, and acting is about moments. And so this is my chance rather than my test to do something I love doing. If I get the part, that's a bonus. Chances are I won't, but I'm not worried about that. I'm not focused on that. One of Meisner's favorite books was a book called Zen and the Art of Archery. So obviously, if you're auditioning, there's a result that you have to kind of forget about, which is I want the part, especially if it's really a project you want to be part of, that you'd love to be part of, that would mean everything because it has great writing or it has some of your heroes in it. It's like your dream part, your favorite novel, whatever, like I have to play this part. That's a tricky place to be in because it could make you press, you know. So you kind of have to forget about that, forget about the bullseye that's in the art of archery, and just focus on the process. And the process involves breathing, doing your homework, know your lines, make some broad stroke choices about, well, here's a key moment, or this is basically what's going on, or this is essentially how I understand the relationship and the character and key moments. You can't have the whole thing worked out, but you have a good rough draft that you feel good about, and stay loose and have fun, because I hope you're acting because you enjoy it. So if you can make that a pleasurable experience, and then I kind of like these people who, like, once they've done the audition, they rip up the sides as a symbolic action, say, okay, that's done. Yep. If they call me, that's a bonus. But I had some moments and I had fun and I put my work out there. It's like throwing bread upon the waters.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen of it. And there's a great story about Sam Rockwell, which I tell a lot. He auditioned, and he doesn't audition that much. It was semi-early in his career, but he was still getting offers. But he had to audition for Duncan Jones, who was David Bowie's son. And he didn't get the part. So he moved on. 2 years later, Duncan Jones reaches out to Sam's team, his agents, this amazing agent named Rhonda Price at Gersh here, and said, I've written a movie for Sam. Sam's the lead. A movie called Moon, which for aficionado is a brilliant movie where Sam plays about 15 parts because he's a clone of a clone of a clone.
Fantastic.
He's basically, yeah. So 2 years go by, Sam doesn't know that Duncan Jones is going, wow, Sam Rockwell's amazing. I can't use him in this project, but I got to write for him, and writes a whole movie for him. So you never know when the stuff you put out there is going to come back.
You don't.
And I mean, you just have to keep putting it out and enjoy putting it out. Exactly. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think it's it's an opportunity to work and stay
right.
work fit and put your best foot forward in front of the industry. And I think interviewing a casting director in Australia, an award-winning casting director, and there's a moment where she said, yeah, look, I mean, even for television commercials, when I'm not casting for features or television series, I might see an actor that's not right. Like, I wouldn't even put them in front of the client, but are just amazing. Just absolutely amazing. And I'll keep them in the back of my mind for this role that I'm casting, on a feature. It's
because they need you.
Exactly.
I had this student. She was a beginner, but she was so interesting and so fresh, and she was like, she wasn't sexy like Marilyn Monroe, but she was disarming like Marilyn Monroe. She had this innocence, and she saw an audition notice after she graduated for Waiting for Godot. And that's a play that's written for men. There's no female parts written in that play. Beckett did not have an, and she just went, they didn't say men, they assumed people knew. So she went to the audition and they said, hi, what are you doing here? She said, I don't know. It looked like such an interesting project. I just thought I'd show up. And they looked at each other, and there was something so interesting about her that they let her audition and they gave her the part of Lucky. And they were not even thinking like that because she just showed up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What are some of the more common problems, or is there a set of problems that you find emerging actors have at the moment or come to you needing compared to more experienced actors that you work with? Are there key differences there?
I want to make sure I understand your question, Max. So
when actors...
Talking about actors who've already trained and are now trying to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not as loose.
Right.
And they don't always have as many ideas, although there's still some established actors with names that you would have heard of that I'm not going to mention because I don't want to get in trouble.
Sure.
Or annoying. because they want me to do all the work. And the best, they want me to come up with their entire performance and fast. And then they're like, how do you have a fucking career? So what they do,
You're the
you
magic
know,
pill that they take the day before a set.
yeah, it's not, I mean, that's nice, but not so nice. So I think that they get nervous. They're not so loose.
Right.
And, you know, my teacher, Bill Esper, used to always say, you're only as good as your ideas. And, and so, like, it's like, why did Philip Seymour Hoffman agree and have a passion for wanting to play Death of a Salesman on Broadway? It certainly was not for the money. Broadway pay is okay, but it's nothing compared to what he'd make if he was doing a film. And why did he want to do a part that had already been played by giants
Yeah.
like Lee J. Cobb and Dustin Hoffman and Brian Dennehy, right? Like, why? And the only reason is because he felt like he had something to say about that role that came from him, uniquely from him. Just like, why would someone, I mean, if you go to like the Apple Music iTunes store and look up how many recordings of Beethoven's Ninth there are, you probably find 100, maybe 500 by legitimate conductors. Now, why is Leonard Bernstein going to decide to conduct Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or whatever? It's because he has something to say about that. He's going to play Beethoven's notes. He's not going to turn it into something else, but the different tempos, or maybe it's more staccato, maybe it's more legato, maybe he's going to bring out the clarinet more. He has an idea about what he wants to say. So I think that's the key thing as an actor, is like, what's your contribution? Because we're hired to create behavior. You look at Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man. I think that's an amazing version of a superhero.
Yeah, isn't it? Because it's like I liken it to when you get characters like police officers, and you've got the stereotypes, right, that you can comfortably go to, but you could play the person whose job happens to be as a police officer.
Totally. And here's the thing. I think your job is to make your work interesting.
Yeah.
To who? To you, not to the audience. To you.
Yeah, we're talking about that passion again, that energy.
Right? Like, if you're a cook, I hope you like your food, man. I hope you're not just making a burrito I can get at any old burrito shop. Like, what's interesting? Oh, I put some pineapple in it, or I put some chocolate in it. Chocolate in a burrito? Who would do that? I did. How is it? Right. So I think that's what inexperienced actors start to get, is like, oh, I get to play, I get to paint, I get to do stuff I get to, instead of, oh, they want something from me, I got to make, and then they do the thing that every other person's doing. The casting person's already seen it, and they're bored and annoyed. And then you walk in and they go, oh, Iron Man, because it's not even in the comics. He's doing it sassy. He's doing it with.
You've got so many superhero movies now, and it still stands out, because he just made the character Tony Stark so interesting, rather than your stereotypical, go-to run and gun superhero.
Yeah, I'll be strong and powerful and flex my muscles. He's like sassy and cool. I love it.
You've coached the likes of Daniel Craig as Benoit and Glass Onion, and Michelle Williams as Mitzi in The Fabelmans, and obviously Sam Rockwell's another favourite actor of mine. So would they come to you, or I guess without talking about specific actors, obviously, does a more experienced actor, when they come to you or should they come to you, having been off book and having their own ideas, having 4 or 5 really big scenes that they really want to workshop with you and have their own sort of choices already made? Or what
It's really the gamut, but well, that's weird, because when Daniel came to me, and we've been in conversation. She's a friend of Sam, so Sam kept saying, "Hey man, you got to work with Terry," and Daniel is doing quite well without me, but he decided to come to me for that, and then for the Scottish play, and then for this new play, new movie he's working on. with Luca and from the book Queer, where he plays a gay man. It's really William S. Burroughs, mind-blowing script, and no one's ever seen him do what he's going to do in this movie, I believe. But when he came to me for Glass Onion, I said, the first time we met, I said, I mean, maybe I'm talking myself out of a job here, Daniel, but I mean, Knives Out was one of my favorite films. I mean, my whole family, my son loves that film. It's just like so perfect.
Yeah.
It's a perfect film. And his performance is so perfect and the character is so clear. What could I possibly add to something you've already figured out? I don't know that you need me. And he said, oh, no, I don't want to repeat myself. I mean, yes, the character's there, but I want to make it even better. And so let's try. And I love working with Daniel because he's an actor's actor and he truly cares. And he's got more money than God. I mean, he's
coming out of one of the biggest franchises in the world.
Biggest franchises. Yeah. But then when Ryan did the deal with Netflix and decided to take it out of theaters, he got a 2-picture deal for $500 million, right? Like there's another one coming.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a gorgeous script, and the performance I think is great that he does, and we had a lot of fun. And it's not about so every actor is different sometimes, but usually, and all I say is I'm just going to try and my goal is to serve the material and to serve you as an artist and find the marriage between those two, and take whatever you're offering and see if I can make it better. Better, what we'll agree better means is clearer, more precise, more alive, and more pleasing to the actor, so that they feel good and that they feel confident. Because, as you know, these days there's no rehearsal for film and TV. If you're lucky, you might get some table reads, maybe, but usually you're going to walk in and do a camera blocking rehearsal, hair and makeup, and start going. So the acting coach is there to substitute for the rehearsal that they might have had.
And what's interesting too, when we talk about that just touch on the business of acting for a moment, where budgets are so tight, or the dollars they have to go to screen so much that there isn't room to sit down and have these 4-week rehearsals, or the luxury of all. But are there times where, or do you work on set as someone tapped you to come into a production that's running to try and work with actors? Because I know some acting coaches have been pulled in that respect.
There are people who do that,
yeah.
And some. I think it's very threatening for a director. And I think it would be prohibitively expensive based on my hourly rate, because so much of film is hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
So I like to be efficient. My idea of a nightmare would be to spend a 12-hour day on set to do 4 pages.
Yeah.
Like that's how many pages a day they get cooking, I mean, like that would just be torture for me and very expensive for the studio or for the actor.
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned it could be, threatening to the director. And I guess certainly it does seem like that more often than not could be a studio decision rather than, a creative opportunity for the director to decide.
I do have a friend who's an acting coach who does work on set, and some people do. I don't do that. Someone said, here's $1 zillion. Can you come and be with me? Because I know people who do that. If I could organize it, I would maybe try and see whether we could make something useful. But this coach works with a star. First thing she does is she goes to the director on day one and say, I am here to support you. I'm here to make you look good. Anything you need, you tell me. Anything I'm doing that you object to, you tell me. So she makes a very smart alliance with the director right off the bat. Says, I'm here for you. I'm here to support your project. I'm not here to get in the way. And most film directors are super grateful if the actor knows what they're doing with or without a coach on set, because then there's so many other things to worry about.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Especially pressure from the money people.
Yeah.
Then if something's not going right, she has a signal with the actor, like she touches her ear or something like that. And that means to the actor, go to the bathroom. I'll meet you there.
Gotcha.
Then she'll give notes out of the earshot of the director, so the director's not threatened, because the director's supposed to be the king or the queen and be in charge of things. And the last thing they need is 1 second, and then they go back and like, wait, I'm the director, not.
Yeah.
So she's very smart in terms of protecting the director's ego and still helping the actor at the same time.
And then back to, up and coming actors who, in the realm of like 50 worders and guest spots, I don't
Is
know.
that a thing? 50 worders? Is that what you call it?
Yeah. Is that
We
not?
call it under fives.
Oh, okay.
And that means you have under 5 lines or something like that.
Well,
But that's cool. The 50
50
worders. And then the next,
worders. Yeah. I mean, it could be that you're doing quite a lot on camera and you have 2 lines. It could be that you got a monologue out of nowhere. The door opens and there you are. It's so different. But for me, the point is, you don't always get the same monologues as De Niro, right?
no.
And you've only got a few moments to really make an impact on screen.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give actors in those moments? You don't get ages to prepare. You might get the script a few days before. What some tips to bring that to life in that moment?
Well, really serve the story. So hopefully you had a chance to look at the whole script so you can know what your role is in the story. Not just what your part is, but how your part is affecting. Like here we have this show called Law and Order, and it's been on forever.
Love that show. I've always loved that
Law and
show.
Law and Order SVU, a Special Victims Unit with Mariska Hargitay, who's been playing Olivia Benson for 23 years.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's a long-standing New York actor's rite of passage to play a co-star or guest star on that show, which usually means you're either the victim or the bad guy.
Yep.
So if you're the bad guy, your role is to be Mariska Hargitay's problem. So then do that. Like really do your script analysis and figure out what your job is to be, right? Why are you there? What does the writer have in mind for you to do? And then that's your lane. And so you don't have to be in the other person's lane. Mm-hmm. In The Godfather, John Cazale playing Fredo, his job was be the scaredy cat. Even though he was an amazing actor, an extraordinary actor, a great loss. He only made 5 movies, and each one of them is a gem. And he was Meryl Streep's boyfriend. He played Angelo in Measure for Measure in Central Park. I mean, this is a guy you could throw down. He's not a scaredy cat, but he played a scaredy cat gorgeously because he understood that's what that project needed, and he stayed in that lane, and no one else is in that lane. Yeah. Pacino's not in that lane. James Caan's not in that lane. Diane Keaton's not in that lane. Brando's not in that lane. Robert Duvall's not in that lane. They have their own lanes.
Yeah.
So that's your lane.
Yeah.
Do that.
It's a great point because sometimes you feel like, oh my God, this is my moment, and you start to veer out of your lane to make your impact, and you're making the wrong impact.
The drummer doesn't have the guitar solo. No. So don't do a guitar solo. Do the drums.
What's interesting, because you've been teaching for a while now, have you seen the demand for certain courses change over the years, or these trends come and go? And for example, is it more people are asking to explore voiceover work, to try and help unlock another dimension as an actor, or is it I've got to do stage combat? There's all these superheroes flying around, or is it Shakespeare? What are you feeling at the moment?
Well, I hope that the goal is to be the best actor you can be. Mm-hmm. I think any actor would be well served by Shakespeare because no one writes better. No one gives you more gorgeous language. The chances that you're going to actually have a job in America doing Shakespeare, if you don't want to do the theater, because the theater pays you in hugs, even though it makes you a better actor, makes you a better actor to do that. That would be great. Stage combat, God, would you be served? Because true stage combat is really about storytelling, not just about skill. How do I tell the story, and how do I tell it in an interesting way, and not just like another fight scene that we've literally seen 1,000 times.
Right.
great fight choreographer is going to tell that story in an interesting way, and in a way that, if you're good at that, and you put that on your resume, you're opening up so many opportunities to work that they don't have to worry about, whether it's Game of Thrones or, Yellowstone or whatever project that is. Not every project calls for that, but to have that in your arsenal
Mm,
couldn't be better. Same with intimacy training, because now,
yeah.
that's a big difference now, is that they're not going to have a sex scene to say, okay, you wing it. It's like, ho, 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 bring on the intimacy coordinator. How are we going to create the illusion of this? How are we going to tell that story? So I think because most actors nowadays think that what they really want is a sustainable career, playing good parts in film and television. Great, do that. Uh, that's a legitimate life. But God, I hope you do theater, because even if you bounce back and forth,
Mm,
because, Sam Rockwell, Daniel Craig did the Scottish play on Broadway. Sam has done 3 Broadway plays and a couple other plays. Denzel did Fences. Denzel did
yeah.
Iceman Comet, right?
Yeah.
Those, that Frances McDormand played Lady Macbeth out in California before making the film with Denzel.
Another favorite
That
actor of
then
mine,
she went from that
Francis.
into three, yeah, then she went into 3 Billboards.
Yeah.
Well, you do Fences on Broadway, you're set up for the Equalizer.
Yeah.
It makes you a better actor, because that's Mount Everest. So I really hope that actors do theater,
Yeah.
not for the money, but for like the workout, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. That's a fantastic point. I think because there's no, it's a timely reminder that there are no shortcuts, and when you do get that 50 worder or the small part, you're able to make the most of it because you've done so much in terms of serving your training and your
And check it
craft.
out, it's going to serve you. I
Mm,
coached Austin Butler, who played Elvis, and I've coached him on a few things, but I coached him on Iceman Cometh on Broadway.
right.
Now he was coming out of sort of kids TV, right?
Yeah.
And he's a born actor. He's wanted to be an actor his whole life, but and he's hungry for the work. But he got a chance to audition, put something on tape, flew to New York, auditioned, got the part. It's a small part.
Mm,
Denzel was in the play, a lot of other good actors. So now Baz Luhrmann's doing Elvis. Everyone wants to play that part. Everybody is making tapes. Denzel writes or calls Baz and says, "You have to see Austin. I did months of Iceman Cometh with him. I've never seen a harder working actor. He's special. See him." That opened the door. They weren't going to look at him,
wow.
right?
That's amazing, and absolutely, yeah. You just keep doing the work, just keep learning. I think every script, every job, that you go to, it's an opportunity to learn. And working with those great actors, that would be
You
fantastic.
create
Fantastic
relationships,
experience.
right?
Yeah.
You talked about Boyd. Boyd did uh, Logan with James Mangold. That led to Indiana Jones. That has now led to he's going to play Johnny Cash with Timothy Chalamet playing Bob Dylan
Wow.
in a Bob Dylan biopic about the moment when Bob Dylan went electric,
Wow.
which was famous at the New York Newport Folk Festival, and someone in the crowd yells out Judas because he'd betrayed them. Well, that's a relationship. That's why, DiCaprio is always working with Scorsese. That's the kind of relationship you want to create, even if it starts with a small part, because, Boyd's part in Logan was a good part, but he wasn't the star of the movie.
Mm, mm.
That was that other Australian guy, the Wolverine guy.
Wolverine guy. Well,
You know,
Terry Knickerbocker, fantastic talking with you. Thank you so much, and I'd love to sometime get back to New York again. I love the city, and fantastic to. I feel energized having spoken to you about so many things today. So hopefully everyone
that's
else listening
nice.
does too.
I'm glad you came to acting again from the corporate world. That's a big risk, and thank you for this conversation. And God, you did your homework. You looked me up and did your research and talked about Michelle Williams and all these people I work with. She's a wonderful actor too. She's gorgeous.
Two unemployed actors.